What's up, cool kids? John here from What's Johnny Watching. Now, I've seen this trend going around on YouTube with people in the community where they will tell you their favorite movie from the year that they were born all the way up to now. So I said to myself, that is a good idea and I need to hop on this trend. But I want to add my little twist to it. So, what I have here are 43 titles. They are my absolute favorites from the year that I was born all the way to 2022. Now there's one year I didn't add anything to it, and I'll explain why I didn't when that year comes up. So here are my 43, but here's the twist. I'm going to add in 3 honorable mentions from each year that I liked, almost loved to the point where they made the list, but they just couldn't beat out my number 1 film. So, I have the names of those films written down because I'm old. Don't laugh. It will happen to you. And I will give you my 3 honorable mentions first and then give you my overall number 1 favorite film from that year. So before I get into it, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. That way I can keep bringing you more of these type videos, and it would really help out the channel. So, without further ado, let's get into it. 1978 was the year I was born. So my 3 honorable mentions from that year are Superman the movie, Animal House, and the classic stoner film Up in Smoke. I know those are 3 hard ones, but it could not beat out my absolute favorite from that year, Dawn of the Dead. This is probably one of the best zombie movies that's ever, I know it's one of the best that's ever been made. It's on par with the original. I like this one better than Zack Snyder's. I know I'm going to get beaten up in the comments for it, but this is an amazing film. And this was the first Romero film I got to see in color. So I love this film, and this film still holds up. 1979. 1979 honorable mentions are The Amityville Horror, Rocky II, Apocalypse Now, but my absolute favorite from that year is Alien. This movie is is a great sci-fi. You could probably classify it as horror too, but this is a great sci-fi movie. You know, Ridley Scott was just unbelievable with what he was able to do with this. Sigourney Weaver and the xenomorph itself. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I prefer Alien over Aliens. Sorry, I just love this one the most. 1981. Actually, 1980. Sorry. 1980, my 3 films were Airplane, Raging Bull, and The Blues Brothers, which I just found out a couple of months ago that my parents took me to see that when I was like a toddler. But my absolute favorite film from that year is The Empire Strikes Back. This is, in my opinion, one of the best Star Wars movie that's been made. It just, the way the story unfolds, you find out who Darth Vader really is. We're introduced to Lando Calrissian, Han being frozen in carbonite. I mean, Luke gets his hand cut off. This is the best Star Wars film. I know a lot of people say they like New Hope, but this one is by far the best in my opinion, and I still love this movie. 1981 is here, and the films from 1981 are the Bill Murray classic Stripes, An American Werewolf in London, and Superman 2. But Superman 2 got really 2 cuts. You have the Richard Lester cut and then the Dick Donner cut. But my favorite film from 1981 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. The world was introduced to Indiana Jones, and we're getting the final Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford in it this year. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, from the opening of the Ark scene where the faces melt. Always wanted a bullwhip when I was a kid because of this. I love this movie. It's a great film, and I think it's the best one out of the series. 1982 is here, and we have my 3 honorable mentions are Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Rocky III. That's the second Rocky film I've had in this. Poltergeist, one of the best horror movies that's been made. But my absolute favorite from that year, E.T. This was the first movie that I remember going to watch as a child, and it affected me back then, watching the bicycle go across the screen in front of the moon, just the relationship that Elliot had with E.T. That movie still blows me away to this day. I mean, just how emotional it is. And when I saw this again in this 4K release, when I saw it, I still teared up at the very end when E.T. and Elliot say goodbye. This is one of the best movies that's ever been made, and I still love it. So, 1983. 1983, my favorites were Trading Places, Octopussy, because that was the first James Bond film that my parents ever took me to go see. War Games. Would you like to play a game? But my absolute favorite from that, it's Return of the Jedi. And the reason is, this was the first Star Wars movie that I ever saw. Because at that time when it came out, Star Wars hadn't come out on TV, and Empire hadn't come out yet. So this was the first one that I ever got to see. And I fell in love with the Ewoks because I was a child, and I had Jabba's space barge as the toys and everything. I had all the Star Wars toys. Man, I wish I still had those toys. I'd be rich now. I'd be like Scrooge McDuck rich if I still had those toys. But anyway, I love this movie. I don't care about... I know it gets a lot of hate because of the Ewoks and whatnot, but I love this. I absolutely love it. And we also got to see Boba Fett. 1984. I have to move my paper so I can get my list again. 1984. Beverly Hills Cop was one of my favorites. Gremlins. Police Academy. A lot of people seem to sleep on Police Academy, but I laughed my ass off at that. But my absolute favorite from 1984 is the movie that made me fall in love with films, and that was Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is my favorite Bill Murray movie. I remember as a kid, I would lay out of school, and my parents would rent me Ghostbusters, and I would lay out of school the next day so I could watch it over and over and over again. I absolutely love this movie. I love the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. The humor in it, everything was awesome, and I still love it, and that's why I keep buying copies of it to this day. 1985, my favorites were Rocky IV. My God, I really like Rocky. The Goonies. Kids today have Stranger Things. Well, we had Goonies. We had Return of the Living Dead. I don't like fast zombies, but I love the Return of the Living Dead. But my absolute favorite from 1985, and I'm pretty sure it's yours as well, it's Back to the Future. Watching this as a child, it blew my mind because I knew nothing about the story of John DeLorean and his troubles with the law. I just knew that car was the most awesomest car. I know awesomest isn't a word, but the most awesomest car that I had ever seen. And I said, I gotta have one of those. And I do have some issues with it now as I've gotten older, but I still love this. It's an amazing film. I like this better than the other 2 sequels. But yeah, Back to the Future is my favorite film from 85. So 1986 is upon us. And that year we had Top Gun, which everybody fell in love with Top Gun. We had Platoon. We had Aliens. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Aliens. But my favorite film from 1986, it's The Fly. To this day, the use of makeup in this film is probably the best I have ever seen. And I know Rick Baker is, the god of makeup and everything, but what Chris Walas and Stefan Dupuis were able to do in this is just mind-blowing. I have never considered The Fly a horror story. I've always considered it a love story between Seth and Stathis Borans and Veronica. But this film, even though it is a remake, it is way better than the original film. And honestly, I think this is David Cronenberg's masterpiece. And a lot of people would say, well, it's either a history of violence or Videodrome or Scanners. No, to me, it's The Fly. And this is my favorite movie from 1986. So 1987 gave us some of my favorites like Beverly Hills Cop 2, Lethal Weapon. Yeah, Lethal Weapon will get mentioned a little bit later. Predator, the ultimate guys movie. But my favorite movie from 1987 is RoboCop. For some reason, a man getting blown to bits and being put back together again as a cyborg and a cop. It was just, as a child, when I first saw this, I didn't see the satire that Verhoeven was going for in the film. I just saw the action and the gore and everything blowing up. I absolutely loved it. And then when I got older, I understood it a lot more. But this is an amazing sci-fi film. It's a great action film. Yeah, it's got a lot of gore in it, but I don't consider it a horror. But this was my favorite film in 1987. 1988. 1988 gave us Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Yes, I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And I hope one day that we get a 4K release of it. The Naked Gun, which introduced me to Leslie Nielsen, because I hadn't seen Airplane at the time. Love The Naked Gun. But my favorite movie from 1988, and I'm sure it's yours as well, it's Die Hard. Die Hard introduced me to Bruce Willis. And I know he was on Moonlighting, but I really didn't watch Moonlighting back then. But it was when I saw Die Hard, one man by himself taking on an army of terrorists, I was hooked. And from the building blowing up and everything, just the gunfire, the action in it, I absolutely love it. I know there's a 4K. I need to buy the 4K, but this is on. Die Hard 3 is probably up there with me with Die Hard, but this was my favorite movie in 1988. 1989 gave us Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which we all thought that was going to be the last one. Lethal Weapon 2. Ghostbusters 2, which was a letdown for me as a kid, but it was Ghostbusters 2. But my absolute favorite from 1989, and I know it's your favorite from 1989, Tim Burton's Batman. This was the first time I had ever experienced pandemonium in going to see a movie. Me and my brother waited at least 6 hours to go watch this movie. And I was glad. I didn't even care that I'd waited 6 hours. I had waited so long to see Batman brought up on the big screen, because I never got to see Superman on the big screen. So this was my introduction to Batman. I saw the TV show and I thought that's what was going to be in this. No, I was wrong. I was glad. Jack Nicholson as the Joker. It was just Billy Dee as Harvey Dent. It was just Kim Basinger. The Prince soundtrack. I absolutely love this Batman movie. This is probably my favorite Batman movie. 1990. 1990, there was Goodfellas. There was Dances with Wolves. Pretty Woman. Now, yes, I like Pretty Woman. But my absolute favorite from that year, I know I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack for this in the comment section, it's Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead. Now, this was the first time I had seen a movie like this in color. Tom Savini, he was the makeup guy for Romero in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. But this was his interpretation, along with George and everybody else involved. This was their way of bringing it, kind of updating it, bringing it to the 90s. And a lot of critics hated this movie. But I think over time, it's underrated. It really holds up. And it doesn't cast Barbara as some sort of comatose girl. I mean, she's a fighter in this. Maybe they took inspiration from Ripley and Aliens. But I absolutely love this movie. I watched this movie more than anything when it came out that year. I think I saw it in like 91 when it was released, because I had no idea they were making it. But this was my favorite movie from 1990. 1991. We had The Silence of the Lambs. We had Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which that was an experience watching that opening weekend. Hot Shots. At the time, I absolutely loved any movie making fun of Top Gun. But my favorite movie from 1991 was JFK. This is my favorite Oliver Stone movie. I remember this movie I don't think this movie came out here. If it did, I didn't pay any attention to it. But I remember renting this on VHS, and it would come with the double pack VHS. And I remember just watching it. And see, I had no idea all the conspiracy talk with the assassination of Kennedy. So, I mean, this movie just hooked me in, and I'm like looking for clues. I'm like, well, maybe I can help solve the assassination of John Kennedy. But this is an absolutely wonderful film. I thought this was going to win Best Picture, and then I rewatched Silence of the Lambs again, and I'm like, no, this Silence of the Lambs, they got it right. But I love this movie. Everything about it, from Joe Pesci, Kevin Costner, Tommy Lee Jones. I love this movie. This is my favorite movie that year. 1992. 1992 gave us Batman Returns, one of my favorite Batman movies. Unforgiven. Wayne's World, my first SNL experience on the big screen, because I didn't, obviously I don't remember, the Blues Brothers. But I went to go see Wayne's World and I loved it. But my favorite movie from 1992, I can't believe it, but it's Lethal Weapon 3. And the reason why this is my favorite Lethal Weapon movie my favorite film of that year, I went to see this movie 16 times in the span of 30 days. I was almost at the movie theater every other day watching this movie. I don't know why. I was just obsessed with Lethal Weapon 3 when I was growing up. But this was my favorite movie that year. I saw this more than any other film that year, including JFK, which was released later on in the early part of 92. But I saw this one the most, and this was my favorite movie that year. So 1993 is here. And 1993, my favorites were The Fugitive, because I remember watching little bits and pieces of the TV show. They would show reruns, but The Fugitive, Schindler's List, Mrs. Doubtfire. But again, I love those movies, but this one I love the most. It was Jurassic Park. I'm sure those of you who went to see the movie can understand, seeing the dinosaurs for the first time, just the CGI and the practical effects of it all, just amazing. And with Jeff Goldblum and Samuel L. Jackson, I had an absolute blast with this movie. I love this movie. Maybe they should have, if they had stuck closer to the source material, I don't know, who knows. I love this, my favorite movie in 93. 1994, there we had Pulp Fiction, which never came here. Dumb and Dumber, which I saw a bunch of times. I still love that. Forrest Gump. But my absolute favorite from 1994 is Clerks. Clerks was the first movie. Now, I hadn't seen Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs, Glengarry Glen Ross. I hadn't seen any of those films before I saw Clerks. So at the time that I saw Clerks, this was the first time that I had noticed or I'd heard dialogue spoken like that before on screen. And it just hooked me. I just loved the way the dialogue in the film. I guess that's why I'm attracted to story over the visuals and stuff. But Clerks was my favorite film in 1994. 1995. My favorites were Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I think is right up there next to the first Die Hard. We had Apollo 13. There was Batman Forever. But my favorite movie from 1995 was Friday. Now, this movie, I loved everything about it. The way it was written, the way the actors with Ice Cube and Chris Tucker. I mean, this movie shot Chris Tucker into superstardom, like almost overnight. It still holds up. The soundtrack, I had the soundtrack on CD and cassette tape. I love this movie. I didn't care too much for the sequels, but this was my favorite movie from 1995. 1996, I had Independence Day, which everybody saw Independence Day. The Nutty Professor, Fargo, which at one point was my favorite Coen Brothers movie. But my absolute favorite movie from 1996 is The Rock. Yes, I know that there's a Blu-ray of this, but I'm breaking out the old Criterion collection of this because why did Criterion put this out? But The Rock, I absolutely love this. It's an action film. It's my first time seeing Sean Connery on the big screen, and watching him and Nick Cage, just their interactions and them breaking into a prison to save hostages. I absolutely loved it. With all the action sequences and everything blowing up, and between you and me, that was Sean Connery was James Bond. That's who that character was. It was James Bond. They just couldn't use the name James Bond. But that was my favorite film from 1996. 1997, we had Men in Black, which I like that movie. There was Good Will Hunting, which I have my own issues with. Good Will Hunting, Boogie Nights, which I am a firm believer was the best movie of that year, and I absolutely love Boogie Nights. But my favorite movie from 1997 is Gone Fishing. Yeah, I'm going to get tore up in the comments over this, but again, it's my choice. It's my favorite film. I like the chemistry between Joe Pesci and Danny Glover. I mean, they're not pretending to be somebody they're not. They just want to go out and fish. They're not out to hurt anybody. And this is the movie, whenever I'm feeling kind of down in the dumps, I always put in Gone Fishing, and it immediately cheers me right back up. So that was my favorite movie of 1997. Now in 1998, my movies that I liked were Armageddon. Yes, I liked Armageddon. Yes. Godzilla. Oh, I like me some Godzilla. I don't care what you say. Lethal Weapon 4. Yes, I love the Lethal Weapon series, but my absolute favorite movie of 1998 was The Big Lebowski. This is my favorite Coen Brothers movie. It was Fargo, and No Country for Old Men was on its way to pushing out The Big Lebowski, but I can't. Just the way it's written, the performances with Jeff Bridges and John Goodman and Steve Buscemi, I absolutely love this movie. I still even use some of the quotes today when I go out bowling, when I hear someone go over the foul line. I will yell at the top of my lungs, whether it's man, woman, or child. I will yell out over the line. But this is my absolute favorite movie from 1998, The Dude Abides. 1999, we had Star Wars Episode 1. That was a fun experience, waiting in that line. We had The Matrix. We had Fight Club. All three. Absolutely love them. But again, my favorite movie from 1999 is American Pie. I remember going to watch this in the theaters, and it was kind of like a sneak preview. You could pay to watch American Pie, and you could stay and hang around to watch Notting Hill afterwards. So as soon as the movie's over with, I was like, okay, let's see how many people want to stay and watch Notting Hill. I mean, I wanted to because I like Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. Everybody got up. Nobody wanted to hang around to see Notting Hill. They should have. Notting Hill's a good movie. But from this, I mean, I was 3 years removed from graduating high school. I knew exactly what these kids were going through. Everybody wants to try to get their first piece. Yes, I'm saying it like that. I absolutely love this movie. It's funny. This is a type of movie that'll never get made again. This needs a 4K. And without this movie, we don't have the term MILF. So, American Pie is my favorite movie from 1999. 2000 is here. And in 2000, we had the first X-Men movie. Everybody went nuts over that. We had Road Trip. I really liked Road Trip. Next Friday. Yeah, it wasn't as good as the original one, but I liked it. I saw it a lot of times. It's kind of funny. But my favorite movie from 2000, Gladiator. Gladiator it shot Russell Crowe into superstardom. And I'd known of Russell from watching Virtuosity with Denzel Washington and The Insider with Al Pacino, which he gave a fantastic performance in that. But I went into watching Gladiator. I knew nothing about it. I just know people loved it, and it had Russell Crowe in it. And the storytelling in that, from he's a former soldier who's disgraced and is enslaved by his former emperor's son. And essentially it's a tale of revenge, and everybody knows the quotes from that movie. What we do in life echoes in eternity, and on my signal unleash hell. This is an absolutely masterful film from Ridley Scott. I love this film, and it's my favorite from 2000. Now 2001, we had The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, which I absolutely love that movie. We had Shrek, which I am a huge Shrek fan. I love Shrek. And we had American Pie 2, the sequel to American Pie. I think they really should have stopped after the second one. They really couldn't do anything else. But my absolute favorite from 2001 is Training Day. This is my favorite performance from Denzel Washington. He deserved the Academy Award in this, and I loved it so much watching Denzel play a bad guy in this. Just, the music from the film, the two performances from Denzel and Ethan Hawke were just amazing. I love how it's shot. This is my favorite film from 2001, and I'm glad it got a 4K upgrade. 2002 is here, and in 2002, SpiderMan was out. Everybody saw SpiderMan. I love SpiderMan. We had the second Lord of the Rings movie, The Two Towers. We had Episode 2, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. My favorite movie from 2002, it's Super Troopers. I can't begin to tell you how much I laughed my ass off at this. I went to see this 2 or 3 times in the theaters, and as soon as it came out, VHS, I bought it. I bought it on DVD, VHS, and then I bought it on Blu-ray. This movie is still funny, and my old job that I used to have, my friends, we will quote lines to each other from this. I love this movie. I wasn't a fan of the sequel, but I absolutely love this. This was my favorite movie from 2002. Now 2003 is here, and we got X2, X-Men United, which is the best X-Men film of that original series. I love X2. We got Bruce Almighty, great Jim Carrey flick with Morgan Freeman playing God. Finding Nemo, which is an amazing Pixar film. I love Finding Nemo. But, my favorite 2003 film is The Return of the King. This is Peter Jackson's best work. He deserved every bit of accolade that came his way for this. He deserved all of the Oscars, all of the attention, everything. This is a masterpiece. I absolutely love this film. I wasn't a fan of the Hobbit trilogy because, this is what was left, and then you go into that thinking you're going to get something this epic and on this scale, and it's really not as good. But this was my favorite Lord of the Rings movie, and this was my favorite movie of that year. 2004, we got Shrek 2, which I love Shrek 2. I don't think it may be as good as the original or a little bit better. We got Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. I have my problems with that, but I still like it. I still like watching that movie. It's still a fun ride. We have Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Yeah, they shouldn't have made the sequel, but that was one. Still quotable, funny lines. I love that movie. But my favorite movie from 2004, Spider-Man 2. This is the best Spider-Man movie that's been made. I honestly believe that, with No Way Home coming a close second. But with Peter Parker losing his powers and sort of, okay, well, I can enjoy my life now. I don't have to be Spider-Man. And Doc Ock with a great performance from Alfred Molina. Even the songs in this, everything was just. This is Sam Raimi's best film. Yes, I'm putting it over his Evil Dead movies. I love this movie, and it was my favorite movie of 2004. Now, 2005 is here, and in 2005, we got the last installment of the prequel trilogy, Star Wars Episode 3, and I saw that the most. It was one of my favorites because we got to see Anakin become Darth Vader. We got the 40-year-old virgin. It's still funny and it still holds up. I love it. And we also got Brokeback Mountain, which I firmly believe should have won the Best Picture Oscar. It was that good. It was way better than Crash. But my favorite movie from 2005, Sin City. From Frank Miller's graphic novel to what Robert Rodriguez was able to create in. Now don't hold me to this. I think he shot it in a warehouse, just using nothing but green screen. This is absolutely amazing how he was able to pull this off. And just the characters in this with Bruce Willis and Benicio del Toro and Mickey Rourke, Jessica Alba, Michael Clarke Duncan. I love this movie. I need to watch this again. But this was my favorite movie from 2005. Now, 2006, we got Cars. I love Cars, but to me, it's just like an animated version of Doc Hollywood. And we had Click, an Adam Sandler film, which a lot of people sleep on, but I actually like it. I love that movie. We also had Clerks 2. A lot of people didn't think that Kevin should have gone back to the well, but Clerks 2 holds up, and it is an amazing movie. But my favorite film from 2006, it's Grandma's Boy. This is a stoner film. I love it. Where Alan Covert plays a video game tester who is behind on his rent because he gives his roommate money and he ends up using it going to a whorehouse. So he's forced to move in with his grandmother and her two roommates, and he's so ashamed to tell his co-workers where he's living. He just tells them he's shacking up with 3 hot babes, and his friends, they try to bust his balls about it, and it just fails. Nick Swartzen's in this, and Jonah Hill's in this. It's Kevin Nealon. It's funny. I still laugh at this, especially when he offers him. He walks in one night and says, "Yeah, give me the Frankenstein." So, this was my favorite movie of 2006. This needs a Region 1 Blu-ray release. 2007, we have 300. Zack Snyder's 300. This is Sparta. I love that movie. I love the graphic novel too. Spider-Man 3. Yeah, I have issues with Spider-Man 3, but it was still good. I still enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. No Country for Old Men. Oh, this one was close to being my number one for that year. But I'm sorry, my number one is going to be Michael Bay, the first Transformers movie. For those of you who remember what it was like when Optimus Prime died in the cartoon movie, and it was traumatic for us as children. I had waited 20 years to see a live action Transformers film. I didn't care what the story was. I still don't care. I wanted to see the Transformers on the big screen, and Michael Bay delivered that with Transformers in 2007. Yeah, the story was stupid and awful and everything, but I didn't care. I was a Transformers fan as a kid. I wanted to see that live action on the big screen, and he delivered in 2007. This was my favorite movie that year. 2008, we had The Dark Knight. I liked The Dark Knight. I liked it a lot. We had The Wrestler. Mickey Rourke got screwed out of an Oscar for that, but The Wrestler, I absolutely love The Wrestler. Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins. It's critics hated it. It was a Martin Lawrence film, but I loved it. But my favorite movie from 2008, Iron Man. This movie kicked off the MCU to what we have today. Without Iron Man, we don't have Thor, Captain America, the Avengers, any of that stuff. Robert Downey Jr. will always be Iron Man. He can go do Doolittle or Sherlock Holmes. He's Iron Man. He needs to accept that. This is one of the best origin stories that's been turned into a movie that I've ever seen on screen. From Jeff Bridges to Gwyneth Paltrow and Robert Downey Jr., everything just works. I will always put Iron Man over The Dark Knight. Yeah, I said it. Iron Man, my favorite movie of 2008. 2009, we got Avatar. I have my issues with Avatar, but I still enjoyed it and I'll still watch it. It's a technological achievement. We have Slumdog Millionaire. Great movie. I absolutely love Slumdog Millionaire. And we got 2012, the Roland Emmerich disaster film. But my favorite out of all those movies that year, is The Hangover. This is probably the last great comedy that was made in that decade. No, they shouldn't have made the last two Hangover movies, but this made stars out of Zach Galifianakis and Bradley Cooper and Ed Helms overnight, if only for the end credit scene, where they're going through the camera and looking at all the stuff that they did. Everybody's been blackout drunk and couldn't remember what they did the night before. Well, yes, this still holds up. This still makes me laugh. This was my favorite movie of 2009. 2010's here. My favorites were Hot Tub Time Machine, Kick-Ass, The A-Team, which it deserved a sequel. I really, really like The A-Team. But my favorite movie of 2010 was Toy Story 3. Yes, I teared up in Toy Story 3. Those of you who have seen it, you can be tough all you want, but admit it, you did tear up, especially at one scene in Toy Story 3. I would put this probably at close to the top of the four Toy Story movies. It holds. This is so emotional. I was an emotional wreck after watching this, but I was glad that I saw it, and I was glad that they ended it the way they did. They didn't need to make the fourth one, but this was my favorite movie of 2010. Now 2011's here, and my favorites of that year were Rango, an absolutely wonderful animated film, CGI. Insidious, that one scene in Insidious still sends shivers down my spine. Bridesmaids, which made a overnight star of Melissa McCarthy, Academy Award nominee for it. But my favorite movie of 2011, X-Men First Class. Another damn good origin story. This one is, it may be the best one out of this set of films. With Fassbender and James McAvoy, that series, it's probably the best one. I know a lot of people like the Days of Future Past. But I like this one. I like a good, coherent origin story. And I mean, you got Hugh Jackman's in it. And Kevin Bacon's the villain. So this was my favorite movie of 2011. Now, 2012 is here. And my favorites that year were Argo, Skyfall. I still think that's one of the best James Bond movies I've ever seen. Wreck-It Ralph. But my personal favorite, everyone's probably their favorite from that year, was The Avengers. This is how a team-up movie is supposed to look. I'm talking to you, Warner Brothers. Don't screw up what you've got going forward. Just look to the blueprint. We finally get, the Avengers are assembled and taking on Loki in downtown New York. The scene where they're all on the bridge and the camera pans around each of them, I still get hair, the hairs still stand up on my arms. That's still just, ugh. I'm like, let's go. I absolutely love the Avengers. This was my favorite movie, 2012. Now, 2013, my favorites that year were Man of Steel, because that was the first Superman movie that I actually really got into. I was anticipating, because it was, kind of an origin story for me. So I was excited to go and watch that. I love that movie. Frozen, yeah, I got annoyed with the whole Let It Go, but Frozen, I love Frozen. The Evil Dead remake. Yeah, I think I would, that might be my number one Evil Dead movie. I'm sorry, but that one just hit all the marks. But my absolute favorite from 2013 was Gravity. This is a work of art. Alfonso Cuarón, I didn't think he'd be able to pull it off. A movie set in outer space where you just have essentially one character. I'm like, you can't do that because it won't make sense. But how Sandra Bullock was able to pull it off, and with George Clooney in it, just the sound and the visual effects in it are just mind-blowing. I absolutely love this, and I'm glad I finally got a chance to see it. So that was my favorite. That was from the movie in 2013. Okay, in 2014, we had the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I love that movie. We had the Lego movie, which is that was a great movie. I really, really enjoyed that. We also had the first John Wick movie. But out of those three favorites of mine, my number one favorite movie is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. To me, this is the best Captain America movie that they made in his set of films. Just with the return of Bucky Barnes and Arnim Zola and Robert Redford. I mean, they got Robert Redford to be in this. It's just the message that it has, where instilling fear into the citizens of this country about with the warships and everything. This is a damn good movie. I would put it up there right under Iron Man and the Avengers movies, and this was my favorite movie from 2014. Now for 2015, we had Creed, which saw the return of Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa. We had Steve Jobs with Michael Fassbender. I really, really liked that movie. That was really well done. We had The Kingsman, the Secret Service. I love that movie, especially with Sam Jackson as the villain and his lisp. But my favorite movie from 2015, a lot of people want to get at me in the comments for this one, but it's Jurassic World. And the reason why I like Jurassic World, it's because when I went into the theater and I sat down and watched it, it took me back to the time when Jurassic Park first came out and you're watching these dinosaurs on screen. And, it had been, I think, 14 years since we'd seen that. And it made me feel like I was a kid again, or a young adult at that time. Watching the dinosaurs on screen. Yes, it's not as good as, it's the best one out of the new trilogy. But yeah, it's not as good as any of the other Jurassic Park movies. But yeah, out of 2015, this was my favorite. It came close to this or Star Wars, but it was Jurassic World. That was my favorite one, 15. Now, 2016, we got Moana, and I heard they're doing the live action remake of, which is stupid. We got Captain America Civil War, where I absolutely love that, where we finally got to see, the new SpiderMan on screen. We got 10 Cloverfield Lane, the sequel to Cloverfield that came out in 2008. I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, especially with John Goodman. And it wasn't the whole shaky cam and everything. My favorite movie of 2016, Deadpool, the Merc with the Mouth. This is the role that Ryan Reynolds seems to have been born to play. Yeah, we got his sort of origin in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but it's that just fell apart on screen. And this is absolutely, I still laugh at this. This is an amazing movie. I can't wait to see what they do when they introduce him under the Disney umbrella. And I know they said they're going to keep it R, but this is my favorite movie from 2016. Now, 2017, we got what I feel is the best Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I haven't seen the third one yet. We got It Chapter 1, which I love it. I love the TV movie of it. And I love this because, they expanded it a lot more. We also had Jordan Peele's Get Out, which is an amazing film. I absolutely love that film. And yes, he deserved the Oscar for that one. But my favorite film from 2017 was Thor Ragnarok. And, a lot of people, some people didn't like the first one. I enjoyed the first one. Didn't care too much for the second one. And this one was like a breath of fresh air. It injected humor into it, especially when he's in the arena and he sees the Hulk down at the end. He goes, "Oh, it's my friend from work." And you've got Tom Hiddleston's back in this, and you've got Jeff Goldblum. It's just, I love that. Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. I love this. It's so funny. The one they did after this, not so much. I think they relied too much on the humor. But this one, I love this. This was my favorite movie from 2017. Now 2018's here, and we got Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I didn't think that they could pull that off with animation, but they really did. That's an absolutely wonderful movie. We also got A Quiet Place. I love A Quiet Place. John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. I've seen bits and pieces of the sequel, so I'll have to go back and rewatch them again. Then we have Bumblebee, which they rebooted the whole Transformers series. And if they continue with what they're doing, if Beast Wars is anything, or Rise of the Beast is anything like Bumblebee, I'll sign up for it. But my favorite film from 2018 was Halloween. I love Michael Myers series. I love those movies. I was a little hesitant about when they came out and said we're just going to forget everything from Halloween 2 to everything past the Rob Zombie films, thank God. and we're just going to pick it up right where the first one left off. And I'm like, well, you can't do that, because if you do that, then we don't have Paul Rudd. I mean, Paul Rudd's a part of Halloween lore. I'm sorry. But after watching what they did with David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, they really did the franchise justice with this. I was glad that they were able to get Nick Castle to come back and be part of the breathing for the shape. And Jamie Lee Curtis, she knocked it out of the park in this one. I absolutely loved this. I wasn't as much a fan as of the other two. I appreciated the second one because we want the gore and everything. The third one, I knew what they were going for. A lot of people hated it. This was my favorite movie of 2018. And in 2019, we got Alita Battle Angel. I was blown away with that. Just how everything looked in that. I was just amazed by it. I love Alita Battle Angel. We got Shazam, which to me was the best film out of that DC EU. I love Shazam. I haven't seen the sequel yet. And then we had John Wick 3, which I think is the best out of the first three John Wick films. I love the third one. But my favorite movie of 2019, and it ended an era, it was Endgame. This movie, I'll admit this now, I did cry at the end of Endgame. And for those of you that have seen it, I'm sure you have, you know what scene I'm talking about. But this was everything that had been building up since 2008 for 11 years. Finally was kind of meted out on screen. The final battle scene with the portals opening up, it gave me flashbacks to watching The Return of the King, that final battle sequence. Absolutely loved it. There's humor. There's even a Big Lebowski reference in this. I loved it. This was my favorite movie of 2019, and it's also one of my favorite movies of the whole MCU. Now we're up to 2020, and I don't have any movies for this particular year, and that's because that's the COVID year. Theaters essentially were shut down, and nothing was being shown, so I spent a lot of my time that year watching TV shows on the streaming sites and stuff like that. I really didn't feel like watching a movie because I had COVID twice and it wasn't fun, so I just vegged out and just watched TV shows and stuff like that. So that's the only year that I don't have a title for. But I'm moving on to 2021, and in 2021 we sort of got back to some normalcy. We got Godzilla vs. Kong. This is a movie that I loved and I have been waiting for ever since I was a child because I'm a huge Godzilla fan. We have Ghostbusters Afterlife. Again, a movie that I've been waiting for ever since I was a child. And yes, I cried in it, and I don't care. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And we also got The Suicide Squad. Which is one of the best new DC EU films. I love what James Gunn was able to do with those characters. But my favorite movie of 2021 is Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I admit I was not a fan of David Lynch's Dune. I could only get through like 5-10 minutes of it. I couldn't handle it. I got so bored with it, I didn't want to watch it. But when I saw this for the first time, I was blown away by what he was able to take from the source material. This is an absolute, I love this movie with the characters with Timothy Chalamet and Oscar Isaac and Dave Bautista, Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, I absolutely love this film. I can't wait for the sequel to come out. And hopefully, maybe one day they'll do a Dune 2-pack where you can watch the first one and then it'll lead into the second one. So this is my favorite film of 2021. And we're down to it. I hope you're still with me. My pick for 2022, My favorite movies from 2022 are Everything Everywhere All at Once. I was a little bit confused, but then it picked right back up, and then boom, I was off to the races, and I love that movie. The Banshees of Inisherin, that was an amazing film, and I honestly thought that was going to get Best Picture. I love that movie. The Batman. The Batman came out that year, and I like everyone else, I did not want to see sparkly Batman. But once I did see it, his performance blew me away. I absolutely love that movie. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, Paul Dano as the Riddler, and he is the best Riddler I've seen on screen. His performance blows Jim Carrey's out of the water. But my favorite film from 2022 is Top Gun Maverick. This movie brought people back to the theaters. I did not think that this was going to do anything at all when they made the announcement. I mean, the movie, you waited almost 30 years or whatever to make a sequel to this. Nobody's going to care. I mean, the people who loved this movie when the first one came out are going to be old by the time this one comes out. I mean, they're not going to care about it. But this is how a sequel should be made. Tom Cruise gives a great performance. He laughs at himself in this. It's just an awesome movie. It sounded great. It looks great. I loved it. And who knows? I have my own prejudices against the original Top Gun film, but if the next one is anything like this, sign me up. I'm in for the long haul. So that's it. That is 43 films down from every year that I've been alive. If you like my picks, if you don't, give me your feedback down in the comment section below. Also, if you want to see me make any other type of lists, any kind of rankings, let me know down in the comment section. And if you like what I give you, hey, hit like, hit subscribe, and click that notification bell. So, until next time, what are you watching today?